Well, playoff hockey rolls on in round 2. Welcome to the Hockey News Playoff Frenzy Live, presented by Sticks.com. Katie Gauze, Michael Agello, and Ryan Henkel joining us, who covers all things Canes for us at the Hockey News. And certainly we want to hear everything that you think, Ryan, about this game. Carolina getting the 2-1 win to take a 1-0 lead in the series. And it took overtime, a late goal from Stankoven. Then we see Carolina getting the victory. So first and foremost, why don't you kick it off for us and tell us your thoughts on this first game of the series between these two teams. Is this what we expected? Because from a game standpoint, it certainly, dictated the game was Carolina. They deserve to win, I think it's fair to say, but it doesn't always work out that way in playoff hockey. So what did you see tonight? And then Michael, I'd love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, so this was prototypical Carolina Hurricanes Rod Brind'Amour hockey. I mean, get in on the forecheck, dump the pucks in, and just go to work, generating chances. Doesn't matter where you're getting the shots from. You just put them on net, and you're limiting chances from the other way. This is more extreme than I thought it would be in the series against Washington because, the Capitals are a really good team, and then they've had a lot of success against Carolina historically too. But this is, Carolina came to play, and it's, like you said, they deserve to win this game. They tripled Washington up in shots, and they had so many opportunities to go ahead. I think Logan Thompson had a tremendous game. Little unfortunate that last one just squeaked by him, but again, Carolina just doing whatever it takes to kind of get the win and, selling out bodies. I talk about selling out bodies. That's more Washington's thing with their 30+ block shots, but
crazy.
Carolina just kept the foot on the gas and just kept going, and they got it done.
There are games that you would send the tape or the disc to the Hockey Hall of Fame. This is not one of them. This was a fairly dreadful performance on both sides. Carolina outshot them, and Carolina deserved to win the game. But we know from past history, sometimes the team who deserves to win doesn't win.
Sure.
But tonight, that did happen with Slavin having that long shot getting by Thompson. I honestly thought that the Capitals came out really flat. We know that that Carolina dominated the first period with the shots.
Yeah.
And Thompson played, I thought, extremely well. But then on one breakdown, Protas goes the other way and scores that goal. And for a while, I thought that goal was going to stand up. And just one error in the defensive zone leads to Stankoven's tying goal. That's playoff hockey, folks, but it wasn't exactly a masterpiece.
Yeah, just having fun and watching Twitter throughout the game, or X or whatever you want to call it. A lot of people commenting that this is a terrible game and yay, we get even more of it. But at the end of the day, playoff hockey, overtime hockey, it's still exciting. It's still interesting. And obviously Carolina getting the win. Let's talk a little bit about one of the storylines that was heading into this game. It was the return of Freddie Anderson. So he got injured back in that first series with Carolina and New Jersey. Injured in game 4, missed game 5. The series ends. So he's back. And by all accounts, looked pretty good again. It's hard to tell in a game like this, but at the same time, certainly, we were seeing some good chances. You're still stopping Alex Ovechkin at the end of the day. If he's on the ice and you don't let him score, you're doing something right. But what did you see in terms of this return of Freddie? And is this going to be something that we can count on from him? Or are we still concerned with his reliability, his stability, just flat out his ability to stay healthy? What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I think anytime you have Frederik Andersen in net, there's going to be some worry about his longevity and his health. That's just comes with the territory. He just has a long laundry list of injuries over his career, but his time in Carolina in the postseason, he has been a very successful goaltender. I think the last series against New York Rangers last year, that was probably his worst one, but you go back 2 years, that run he had, knocking off the New Jersey Devils, not knocking off, but going toe to toe with Sergei Bobrovsky in the Florida Panthers. He was just as good as Bobrovsky, and, Bobrovsky just had that one saves here and there, just extra ones. He's been really, really good for Carolina, and a little bit, different than what we'd seen in his time in Toronto. But, there wasn't too much concern with the Hurricanes about Anderson's status. Obviously, he missed that game 5, but they labeled him day to day. They'd said he was fine, and, he was right back at practice. As soon as they advanced game 5, had one day off, he was back practicing with the team, taking over the starters crease. So there wasn't too much of a huge worry about his overall availability. But like you said, moving forward, it's always just going to be a game-by-game basis with Frederik Andersen, because it's just, he's 35. He has a long list of injury history. But if he can stay healthy, keyword, he's been a difference maker for Carolina for as long as he's been in Raleigh.
Yeah, and I mean, Michael, you mentioned it earlier, but on the other side, Logan Thompson, I mean, he was easily one of the best goaltenders that we saw throughout round one. Freddie Andersen is going to have to be excellent, because it feels like Logan Thompson isn't slowing down. Obviously, that one squeaks through there with Slavin getting the game winner. Any goalie's not going to love that, but a lot of traffic in front, and he played an excellent game. What are your thoughts on, what Logan Thompson is going to maybe need to do throughout this series?
Well, I don't think he has to do much more than what he did tonight. I thought he played excellent. Facing, I think it was 30. It ended up being 33 shots. I mean, I've been saying regarding Logan Thompson, I thought he should have made Team Canada for the Four Nations, and it was bizarre that he didn't. And based on the way he played this year, and if he continues to play that way next year, I think he's going to be one of the top 3 for Canada for the Olympics. Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is that Freddie Andersen, it must have been just that 5 years in Toronto that was because he went to a conference final in Anaheim when he was with the Ducks, and then all of a sudden he becomes a playoff star when he goes to Carolina. So it was that sinkhole of 5 years when he was wearing blue and white that just didn't jive with him. But he played an excellent game, although he only faced less than 20 shots. If you can take that and get that during a playoff game, you'll take it.
Well, fans, if you're going to score on either of these great goaltenders or any goaltender out there, you're going to need a stick to do it. And remember that Playoff Frenzy Live for the Hockey News is brought to you by Sticks.com. Don't break the bank on sticks when you can get a pro-level composite stick without the pro price tag. Head to Sticks.com, that is Stix.com, to check it all out. All right, well, at the end of the regular season, we saw a lot of fireworks between these two teams. There were a couple of games where we saw some borderline full-on brawls, a lot of fights, a lot of extracurricular activities. We didn't really get a whole lot of that tonight, other than maybe the little scrum we got towards the end of the game after that Chychrun penalty, where everybody was a little hyped up, a little amped up. And again, it's playoffs, right? So there is the expectation that things are more serious. You can't be putting your team in a disadvantage by getting into too much trouble. But at the same time, if there is this history, is there any anticipation that maybe as this series goes on, we could start to see a little bit more bite between these two teams? Because overall, tonight's game, maybe it was just the way the game went overall, but it felt kind of tame. And I know one thing would have made it more interesting was certainly getting a little bit more scrum action, a little bit more feistiness going on between the teams. What do you think, Michael?
Well, let's just say this. If Jackson Blake is as annoying as his dad Jason was, I want no wonder he got jumped and cross-checked, and then Seth Jarvis comes in to save him, and then Seth Jarvis gets mugged during that little scrum behind the net. I mean, clearly, Washington, I believe, is a much bigger team with guys like Protas and even Ovechkin being physical like as he can be at times. They're going to try to wear on the Hurricanes. I think they're going to try to wear on their defense. You've got some age there with Burns. Slavin eats 25 minutes a night. They're probably going to try to wear and tear on him. And that's probably going to be their plan. It didn't work tonight because they couldn't score, and you need to score to be able to win. And you need to generate more than 14 shots on goal. So that's something that Spencer Carberry is going to have to address going forward.
Well, and Ryan, we certainly saw the physicality. Hits were, I want to say it was like 44-31. Oh, there we go on the bottom. We got it, 44-31. So Carolina is certainly finding ways to get physical and play up to, kind of the standard that we know Washington has with some of those bigger bodies. Is that beneficial to them, or do they have to be careful? Because we see it with teams. If you try to maybe be a little too conscious about the physicality, you start to lose some of your identity. It certainly didn't feel that way tonight. But what do you kind of expect in terms of Carolina sticking up for themselves and having to stay tough against what Washington is going to try to do, like Michael mentioned?
Yeah, well, I don't think Carolina identifies itself as being a physical team. I don't think they're afraid to get physical. You have guys like Andrei Svechnikov, Jordan Staal, Jordan Martin, Will Carrier. There's a lot of guys here that aren't afraid to throw the body. And you look at Logan Stankoven and Seth Jarvis, and you're like, these just couple of small guys here, but those just two little bulldogs. I mean, they are unafraid to go into the corner, fight for net front position. So, I mean, this is a Carolina Hurricanes team that's got a little bit smaller up. I would say in the top 6 definitely is a big disparity in terms of size, but there's guys that aren't afraid to throw the body, and there's guys that are big and solid too. I think Jordan Staal is one of the most solid human beings you'll encounter in this game.
Well, we know that Rod Brind'Amour has done an incredible job in his coaching career of getting out of the first round and winning that first round every single year that he's been there. But how is he going to extend their time in the playoffs? What's going to be different? And is there something about this team, Ryan, that you notice that has the potential to take them a little bit further to actually get them where they want to be, as opposed to being really solid in the early rounds and just not quite being able to cross the finish line? What do you see that's maybe different, or what's it going to take from this group?
I think it's just going to take the full team buy-in. I mean, it's the cliche always that you always get, especially with the Rod Brind'Amour teams, but there's just something to be said about it. I think it's funny because, like, you look, last year's team was the most talented roster they've ever had on paper, like hands down, and they lost in the second round. But then you look at some other teams, like the one before that, they went to the conference final. They didn't have Pacioretty or Suchnikov due to injuries. You go back all the way to 2019 when they first made the playoffs to go to the Eastern Finals again. There's just something about this team when maybe there's a little less star talent and maybe they're doubt a little more, they just perform more. Everyone's buying in. There's something to be said about that Rod Brind'Amour team pulling on the same rope, 4 lines, rolling, doing everything they can. And hockey's weird like that, and sometimes that's what works for them.
You agree, Michael?
Yeah, they need all 18 skaters really trying, really performing at their highest level. I mean, they're not an overly talented team, although I love Stankoven. He is a player that, ideally they wouldn't have wanted to make the deal, but they were forced into that deal with Dallas and trading Rantanen. Getting Stankoven is the sort of the cherry on top of the sundae, because, he's a guy who came in with a very few games left in the regular season and then sort of starred for Dallas in a depth role. And he seems ready to bloom into I don't know about a star, but a very effective player. And they, the Hurricanes are not short of talent, but right. I think that they really need, guys like Jankowski and Eric Robinson and like their depth players to kick in goals, because head to head against the Capitals, I think the Capitals probably have more top end talent, but I think maybe the Hurricanes are deeper and they're going to need that depth to take advantage.
Well, I've got a 2-part question here, and one of them comes from our comment. So it says, hey, Ryan, why is Stankoven fitting in so well since joining the Hurricanes? So I want you to answer that. Then I want to follow up with how he got to the Hurricanes, which is a whole nother discussion that has played out quite interestingly so far in that first round series between Dallas and Winnipeg. But first things first, Stanky, who has one of the best nicknames in hockey, what has been a good fit for him with Carolina?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of credit to be given to the Carolina Hurricanes pro scouting department head by Mark Craig. I mean, they just know how to find players that fit their system. Like, that's their number one MO, is finding guys that play their style. And Logan Stankoven plays Carolina Hurricanes hockey. As a guy, not the biggest guy in the world by any stretch of the means, right. But he plays hard. He straight line hockey. He's fast. He's aggressive. He digs for pucks. He wins puck battles, which is a huge thing for Hurricanes hockey. You got to win. You got to go to the boards and you got to win those 50-50 pucks. And I also noticed he just shoots the puck no matter where he is. He gets that puck on his stick. He's firing it. He doesn't care. And, the Hurricanes, again, that's their MO. Just shoot that puck. And it's been going well for him. 3 goals this playoffs so far. He's been a really big impact performer for the Hurricanes so far.
All right, so then let's transition into the conversation about how he got there, which of course was the Mikko Rantanen debacle. So he goes to Dallas, Stankoven comes to Carolina. And after the trade happened, there was a lot of discussion about the sort of a run that Carolina went on, this chip on their shoulder that he doesn't want to be here and people don't want to be a part of this organization, whatever it may be. There's so much going on with Mikko that it's truly hard at this point to even really know what went down. And I'm sure no one is asking themselves that question more than the Colorado Avalanche, who he eliminated basically single-handedly. But from your perspective and being around the team and the organization, what did you notice after Mikko Rantanen departed from a team standpoint and just kind of everything that went down surrounding that whole situation?
Yeah, I definitely think that phrase you used, chip on the shoulder, kind of played a big role in that, kind of the way the team kind of composed themselves. It was an up and down, like I would say November, December, January, very up and down months for the Hurricanes. And after that trade happened, you go into the Four Nations break and everything's weird and things aren't really clicking. Carolina starts to try to figure it out about 6 or 7 games into Rantanen's kind of tenure. And, a big thing Brendan Moore kind of talked about at the time was, the team was almost deferring to him. They were like, hey, you're supposed to be the top end guy. You're like, we're just going to try to run through you instead of, the Hurricanes' whole thing is having 4 lines. Everybody has to play their role. And so they kind of got away from their identity because they had this superstar talent and they were like, we don't know what to do with it. We've never kind of had a guy like this before.
Sure.
And then the whole thing comes out where he wasn't going to re-sign in Carolina, and whether or not, there's 2 sides to every story. And Carolina said that he admitted he wasn't going to do it. Randon said, I didn't say that necessarily, but we see how it all played out in the end. And it definitely was a rallying cry because you hear a lot of these guys who just recently resigned, Frederick Anderson, Taylor Hall. They all talked about how they're like, I love Carolina. Like I wanted to be in Carolina. I want to extend and play here. Like I love it here. And so that's a big thing. Like a lot of guys in the locker room, I think Jordan Marnock had a really good take on it as soon as Rantanen departed. He was like, we want guys that want to be here. Like we're focused. If you want to be here, you're here. And if, everyone who's here is focused on moving ahead and winning. And I think that's huge for a team because as good as a player as Rantanen is, I mean, if he didn't want to be there, that just kind of affects the chemistry in the locker room. There's a lot of little things that can, make a team a little less successful, just have a little less effort here and there. That can be the difference in a playoff series.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, here we go. We got another comment here. Is the Caps defensive core outclassed in this series? That's an interesting one. Michael, what do you think?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I like the additions that they made in the offseason, trading for Jacob Chychrun from Ottawa because he wasn't going to sign in Ottawa. Gee, we just talked about something like that. And signing Matt Roy in free agency, and he's been a pretty decent. He's solidified their blue line. What people don't realize is the Carolina defense of last year is not the Carolina defense of this year. I mean, I think Jacob Slavin is one of the best defensemen in the league. He's won Lady Bings. He's one of the top defensive defensemen in the league. There's a lot of age on that blue line, with Brent Burns. I think Orloff is still a pretty good defenseman. They lose Brady Shea, they lose Brett Pesce, and they replace him with Sean Walker. Chatfield's a decent depth guy. But their defense isn't what it was in previous years. Now they may have more success based on what Ryan is saying. Is like sometimes it's all the esprit de corps and everybody has to play their role and do. But talent is talent, and you want as much talent on the blue line and up front as you can. I think in the end, they're not lack of depth, but the decrease in talent on the blue line is probably going to be one of the determining factors of whether they advance this round or whether they lose. It's something that I think Eric Tulsky maybe have to address in the summer.
Well, heading into this series, Michael, we talked a lot about what your prediction was in terms of who was going to win and how long this was going to take. But Ryan, I want to get your opinion on it. I think tonight kind of reconfirmed for a lot of us that this probably was going to take 7 games. Certainly feels like it could go that direction. So what is your kind of your take on this series and who's your pick to win and how long is it going to take?
Yeah, I always like to say, and kind of whenever I'm on shows or whatnot, I'm no fortune teller, but I will give my best shot. Like, I think this is going to be a 7-game series too. I think these are 2 really talented, deep teams, veteran presence, a lot of guys that are capable of pulling through, like Tom Wills can change a series, Alex Ovechkin can change a series, but so too can Sebastian Aho and Andrei Svechnikov. I mean, these are all top end talents that can, alter a series, but I think these are just 2 veteran, deep teams, and it's going to go a long way. I think, Carolina getting game 1 on the road, that, sets a big tone early because you always say it's not a series until you win on the road. So I think this win right here could be a springboard for Carolina. And I'd give them the edge just based on taking this first game the way they did it.
I like it. Well, we have another game that's going on right now. It's in between periods between the Edmonton Oilers and the Vegas Golden Knights. Vegas, obviously, with the home ice to kick off game 1 of this series. So it is 2-1 after the first period. We had 2 goals from Mark Stone. I believe both of them came on the power play. But then Edmonton getting themselves on the board to keep things interesting. And it was Corey Perry who scores. So let's quickly touch on a little bit about this series because this is interesting, right? We've got this incredible story of Cal Pickard who's coming in and doing things that no one really expected from him, because this isn't the role you're necessarily supposed to have to take when you're the quote backup, but he has certainly embraced it and done well. You've got great offense in front of you. You're going to need that. But Vegas is a much different beast than the LA Kings are. So, I mean, Michael, we've touched on it a little bit, how you thought maybe, this was going to be tough for Edmonton, but just if you've gotten to watch any of it or just have early impressions on this game and what this series could become, what do you think?
Well, the first warning sign tonight was Doroviev not in the lineup and Alex Petro's sick, and he's a pillar on their blue line. But they're deep on defense. But you want a guy who's won a couple Stanley Cups,
sure,
especially when you're playing against McDavid and Draisaitl.
Bad time to not feel good.
Yeah, the Vegas Golden Knights are not the LA Kings. The LA Kings, when they see the Edmonton Oilers, go into PTSD. That's why Rob Blake was mutually terminated, meaning fired. And he's fired because he didn't do enough at the deadline and because they lost to the Edmonton Oilers 4 times. So I think Vegas should be favored in this series. Obviously, they finished in first place in the Pacific. I think with their championship and playoff pedigree, they should be favored. There's a lot of flaws with Edmonton. Their blue line without Ekholm is, I think, average at best. And I give Calvin Pickard a lot of credit. I mean, I saw him play for the Toronto Marlies a few years ago and advocated he'd be the backup in Toronto. And then they lost him on waivers and he's gone a few different places. He's an excellent backup. He's not a starter in the playoffs. This is not Dustin Tokarski or some of these things where he had to replace a goalie who was injured. No, I think Stuart Skinner's psyche is injured because he's not the same goalie he was when he carried them to Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final.
Yeah, no question. Actually, for fun today, I saw a great interview with Colby Armstrong chatting with Calvin Pickard and having him recite all the teams that he had been on. So I had to pull up Elite Prospects because I just love seeing those journeys for these goaltenders. It was, I want to say, 12 different organizations over the course of about 13 seasons. So incredible, the journey. AHL, NHL. At one point during COVID, he went over and played for the Vienna team. I mean, he's been a little bit of everything, but you have to give a goalie like that. I mean, in any goalie, it's a journey for a lot of these guys, right? If you're not just a starter, if you're not one of these number one guys, a lot of the times it does take quite a while to find your game, to find your fit. But like you said, Michael, this isn't a guy that just comes in to replace an injury. This was a choice that Edmonton made to go with him when they did. And I think it was because of the confidence that they have in him and what they know he's capable of doing. Ryan, from your perspective, just again, we have no idea what's going to happen, right? We're only in round 2. But is there a team in the West that when you look at the way Carolina plays, if they can make it all the way to a cup final, is there a team in the West that you kind of have your eye on that would be a good matchup for the Hurricanes?
That's a tough one because there's so many pick your poisons out west. I think,
sure.
Like if I'll start this way. I'll say Dallas is the team I least would want to see.
Okay, fair.
I think they're the deepest, most talented roster purely left in the playoffs. Winnipeg is an interesting one. They win the President's Trophy, but playoff Hellebuck. I mean, if he makes it to the Cup final, there's all of a sudden it's not playoff Hellebuck anymore, though. So. Unless they're pulling us.
What is second round Hellebuck going to look like? And then we'll go from there, right?
We'll go from there but I think, they're another team that's like has a lot of depth, but not a lot of like superstar talent. Like I think Scheifele and Connor are amazing players, but after that, there's kind of like a, where do you kind of plug in, good players, but are they like superstar talent level players? And then I'll go Vegas just has the experience and I think they have the depth. But the question for me with that is it's both them and Edmonton is like the goaltending. There's 3 goals in 20 minutes in this game, and I didn't know that was allowed after watching, Washington, Carolina. I didn't know you could score 3 goals in a single period. I think needed more than regulation to do that. But I think Edmonton could be a real interesting one because, like you said, if Ekholm, obviously maybe he'll come back in time, but if not, that blue line suspect, the goaltending situation is really bad. But then again, it's Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid. Do you really want to play against them? No. So it's a tough one. Like if I had to pick, I would say, Winnipeg or Edmonton, but it's not like I really want to do. If you're Carolina, you don't want any of them. You just want to close your eyes and be like, whatever happens, happens, and we'll be at peace with it. We don't want to manifest anything.
Yeah, Michael, what do you think? I mean, is there a team that when you watch the way Carolina plays, which is, as advertised, they don't deviate, we know what to expect. Is there a team in the West that you think maybe is more favorable? Because again, I don't know, heading into this playoffs and when I was making my bracket, and even right now, my bracket in the West is doing so much worse than the East, because I feel like the East, you just kind of knew what you were getting. And in the West, it's just a gauntlet, and every team matches up so differently against each other. And it's such an opponent-based thing. So what's kind of your perception of, who in the West would be someone that Carolina would maybe be wanting to see if, of course, they were able to make it to that Cup final?
Well, they'd probably want to see Edmonton simply because of the defensive issues and the goaltending issues. If not them, then I think Winnipeg, not because because they won a President's Trophy, but Four Nations Connor, as I call him, is not regular season Connor Hellebuck, who's going to probably win the Hart Trophy. And you're going to have a Scheifele who is diminished because of injury, possibly, and Ehlers, who came back after missing the first 5 games of the first round, and Josh Morrissey and Logan Stanley. So, keep piling on the injured list here. You want a team as weak as you possibly can get. In Dallas, Heiskanen and Robertson are coming back, and Vegas was my pick to come out of the Western Conference because they had the easiest path. It's a war of attrition, and if you don't have to go through the Central Division and you get a chance to play in Minnesota and then play the winner of Edmonton, LA, which was Edmonton, that's a much easier path than anybody coming through the Central.
I like this comment we got here. Canes versus Oilers final, and Jeff Skinner gets the series winner. One of our favorite guys who's finally getting a taste of the playoffs that I think everyone can root for.
Yeah, one game of the playoffs, and then he's been scrapped.
Yeah, I know, but he made it. Come on.
Got to give credit to Skinny. I felt so bad for him, just over year after year after year.
Oh, it was starting to get ridiculous. Ryan, when I knew you were coming on our show tonight, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, and I don't know if you have any scoop on this or not, but we had some news involving Carolina today with the announcement that the Greensboro Gargoyles announced that they were going to be the Canes ECHL affiliate. Do you have any scoop on that and the whole Chicklets team that's getting their ownership on with this East Coast hockey? I mean, if Paul Bissonnette is involved, then something crazy is going to be going down in Greensboro. But do you have any info on that?
Not any info, just kind of outside of what we already know about. The team's going to be coming next year and be taking over the First Horizon Center. I think it used to be the Greensboro Coliseum, which is where the Carolina Hurricanes first played hockey when they first came to North Carolina, because the arena, which is currently Lenovo Center, wasn't built at the time. So it's kind of a neat little full circle moment, kind of getting hockey back in that spot, which again had a lot of hockey, like AHL, ECHL. They've had a long history of hockey being in Greensboro. So it's really cool. I think, there's always the jokes about hockey down south and how you're going to sell it. And an ECHL team, you're like, oh, maybe worse attendance. But I think if anybody's going to be able to market a team, it's going to be the Spin Chicklets boys. And I think they're going to find some fun ways to have a pretty good time down here in Carolina.
Yeah, I have no doubts about that. It's going to be very interesting. All right. Well, here's one for both of you. Because Brent Burns, I heard them talking about him on the broadcast tonight and saying, I want to say it was 1,500 games. I mean, this is just one of the journeymen in the NHL who has just continued to, impress with his ability to stay in this league and battle and be effective. Would you say he's got to be one of the guys in this playoffs that is most, someone that you'd be rooting for to finally win? Because every year there's a couple guys who are like, they just got to get that cup. I mean, he seems like a good candidate that you just would be like, you know what, this guy deserves it after everything that he has gone through and his long career.
Yeah, he's the prototypical old guy without a cup. That, I think you always see those rankings from different writers come to playoff time. But yeah, this is a guy that's Iron Man streak. He could potentially challenge for it, if he wants to keep playing, because he's 40, but the dude's in perfectly good shape. He's one of the Hurricanes. They always do a fitness test at the beginning of the year, and Burns is always one of the top 3 guys. Crazy. Every year. He just is a fitness nut. He knows how to take care of his body, and he knows, how to have longevity. He's 40. He's playing 20 plus minutes a night for the Hurricanes, playing top power or second power play, top penalty kill. And he's doing all, and he looks like he can keep going. And like you said, he's a Hall of Fame career. He's one of the top scoring defensemen of all time. He's got a Norris Trophy. He's been to the Cup final before. He's done it all except, win the Stanley Cup. So it's definitely one of those guys you can get behind and root for, because it's a cool story. It's a great hockey story, and it's a guy that has been a name in the league for a long time. It's not just some guy. Most everybody who watches hockey knows about Brent Burns, I would say.
All right. I like this question. We'll wrap up our show with this one, talking a little bit World Championships, because we have seen quite a few different names that have been eliminated from the playoffs who are now going over to play for their countries. And we've got the question, is Canada going to dominate the World Championship with their veteran presence? So obviously we know we got Fleury going to Canada. We've got Crosby going to Canada. McKinnon's going, I believe. I want to say Natchez just announced that he was going to be going to play. So certainly, for Czech, there's a lot of big names that are going in. I think these guys just, these first round eliminations, they're not ready to be done playing hockey. And some of them are just addicted to it. I mean, I know Crosby and McKinnon just can't help themselves, and they love the chance to play together. But what do you think, Michael? Is this going to be a bit of a landslide for Canada in this tournament?
Mike Matheson is going as well.
Yeah.
I mean, really, Canada is it's a situation where, unfortunately, a lot of these players, like, nobody expected McKinnon to be available.
Yeah.
Now, in Fleury, this is his last opportunity to he can get a gold in the World Championships. You look at some of the other rosters. I was looking at Team USA's roster because Tage Thompson from the Sabres is on there, and it's you got a bunch of kids, and Joey Decourt is the goalie, and I think Canada is easily the most talented team at the World Championships, but as we've seen in international tournaments, sometimes the best team doesn't win. I almost think you got all these former Pittsburgh Penguins going there. I'm waiting for Evgeny Malkin to defect and sign up with Canada and go to play at the World Championship.
Well, he would if he could, because he loves playing with Crosby just as much as Nate does. And I loved the quote from Fleury jokingly saying, after his retirement, when the NHL season ended for him, that he got home and the kids were crazy and he knew he had to keep playing. He's like, I'm not ready to be full dad mode just yet. And certainly for all of us who love Fleury, love to see him keep playing for as long as he can. All right, guys, good stuff tonight. Ryan, thanks so much for joining us and bringing us all the insight on all things Carolina. Certainly going to be an interesting series. Maybe we get a little more action, hopefully, moving forward. But either way, it feels like this one could go the distance, and it's kind of a toss-up on who's going to come out on top. We've got more good action coming up tomorrow. We have Game 2 of the Panthers and the Maple Leafs, and then the Stars and the Jets will kick off Game 1 of that very highly anticipated Central Division meeting in Round 2. That's it for the Hockey News Playoff Frenzy Live. Thanks for joining us. For Ryan Hankel and Michael Agello,